3 coffins ready.
Interesting facts about famous people.
Westerns set in Mexico. Picture a sombrero'd, Pancho-clad cowboy, with an impressive mustache, chugging a tequila and puffing on a cigar. Often referred to as south of the border, a safe haven for those avoiding the law. Mexico has been the subject of Western movies for decades. While these films sure look and feel like Westerns, they aren't. They aren't the Westerns about the pioneers who came west to settle Utah, Arizona, Oregon, California, and more. Before we get into this video, let me be clear. These are movies set in Mexico, not necessarily made by Mexicans, maybe not even shot in Mexico. Just as far as I know, set in Mexico. Sorry, just anticipating the comments. Let me know some more examples. As always, we're here to have fun and celebrate the genre. Ay Chihuahua. Here are some of the Western movies set in Mexico. The Magnificent Seven. A bandit terrorizes a small Mexican farming village. Several village elders send farmers to the United States to find gunmen to help and defend them. They find 7, each arriving with their own reason to join. They prepare the town to defend against an army of 30 bandits who will arrive wanting food and more. Filmed almost entirely on location in Mexico. The Professionals. A rich Texan, J.W. Grant, selects 3 men and invites them to his private train to offer them a contract. Rescue his wife, who has been kidnapped by a Mexican revolutionary. The leader of the men, Rico, decides they would be a better team if Grant would hire one more man, an explosives expert. Grant quickly agrees, and soon the 4 are off to complete the contract. Filmed almost entirely in the US.
What a name for the bloodiest cutthroat in Mexico.
Viva Zapata, a 1952 Western directed by Elia Kazan, starring Marlon Brando. The cast includes Gene Peters and, in an Academy Award-winning performance, Anthony Quinn. The film is a fictionalized account of the life of a Mexican revolutionary, Emiliano Zapata, from his peasant upbringing through his rise to power in the early 1900s and his death in 1919. Filmed entirely in the US. Valdez is coming. The town constable, Bob Valdez, Burt Lancaster, is forced to kill someone accused by Frank Tanner of being a murderer. Valdez asks Tanner for financial help for the man's wife, but he is ridiculed and almost killed by Tanner's henchmen. Valdez recovers and summons up his experience in the cavalry in order to fight them. Valdez wounds one of the henchmen and sends him back to Tanner with this message: Valdez is coming. Filmed entirely in Spain. The Wild Bunch. It's 1913, and the traditional American Western frontier is dying. Amongst the inhabitants of this dying era are a gang known as the Wild Bunch. After a failed railroad office robbery, the gang heads to Mexico to do one last job. Seeing their times and lives drifting away in the 20th century, the gang takes a job and ends up in a brutally violent last stand against their enemies, deemed to be corrupt, in a small Mexican town ruled by a ruthless general. Filmed entirely in Mexico. One-Eyed Jacks. Running from the law after a bank robbery in Mexico, Dad Longworth finds an opportunity to grab the stolen gold and leave his partner Rio to be captured. Years later, Rio escapes from the prison where he has been since, and hunts down Dad for revenge. Dad is now a respectable sheriff in California and has been living in fear of Rio's return. Filmed both in the US and Mexico. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Fred C. Dobbs and Bob Curtin, both down on their luck in Tampico, Mexico, in 1925, meet up with a grizzled prospector named Howard and decide to join him in search of gold in the wilds of central Mexico. Through enormous difficulties, they eventually succeed in finding gold, but bandits, the elements, and most especially greed threaten to turn their success into disaster. Filmed both in the US and Mexico. A fistful of dollars. Drifter gunman Joe, Clint Eastwood, arrives in the Mexican village of San Miguel at the border of the United States of America and befriends the owner of the local bar, Silvanito. Joe discovers the town is dominated by two gangster lords, John Baxter and the cruel Ramon Rojo. When Joe kills 4 men of Baxter's gang, he is hired by Ramon's brother, Esteban Rojo, to join their gang. However, Joe decides to work for both sides, playing one side against the other. Filmed both in Spain and Italy. Three Amigos. 3 out-of-work silent movie actors are accidentally drawn to a Mexican village that has been harassed by a gang of outlaws. The 3, Ned, Lucky Day, and Dusty Bottoms, play Lone Ranger types in their movies, but must play their parts for real now. Filmed entirely in the US. Desperado. Bucho is a wealthy but casually bloodthirsty drug kingpin who rules a seedy Mexican border town. He and his men make the mistake of angering El Mariachi, Antonio Banderas, a former musician who carries an arsenal in his guitar case. Bucho was responsible for the death of El Mariachi's girlfriend and put a bullet through his fretting hand, making him unable to play the guitar. Bent on revenge, the musician turned killing machine arrives in town to put Bucho out of business. Filmed entirely in Mexico. The Mask of Zorro. In 1821, Old California, mysterious black-caped masked avenger of the oppressed, Don Diego de la Vega, Zorro, lands in jail after once again humiliating the evil Spanish governor Don Rafael Montero, with his only daughter raised by Don Rafael as his own. The grizzled swordsman makes a daring escape nearly 2 decades later, and takes under his wing the unrefined outlaw Alexandro Murrieta to teach him the ropes and hopefully become the next Zorro. Now the stage is set for a ferocious final confrontation, as the new young rapier wielder prepares to thwart the despicable governor's sinister plans. Can Alejandro live up to the legendary Zorro's name? Filmed entirely in Mexico. A warm welcome to any new viewers. Thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate your likes and subscribers. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to get my new videos. Share with your friends. Drop me your comments. Bye for now. See you again soon.
Interesting facts about famous people.